Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin. I'm joined again by Jeff Berkowitz, and we're going to be reviewing a number of issues that came up. Primarily, Jeff, let's talk with the State of the Union address that President Biden delivered the night before we taped this. And it is the talk today in Washington and in many places around the country. And amazingly, Jeff, Biden started off his State of the Union address by talking about Ukraine.
History is watching. If the United States walks away, it will put Ukraine at risk. Europe is at risk. The free world will be at risk, emboldening others to do what they wish to do us harm. My message to President Putin, who I've known for a long time, is simple. We will not walk away. We will not bow down. I will not bow down.
And there he is. Jeff, what did you think about the idea that the State of the Union started off with the president speaking at length about Ukraine?
Well, I wouldn't do it at length, Terry, but it was smart. It's a smart start because he's leading with his strength. If there's any weakness for the GOP, it's the uncertainty raised by Donald Trump as to how strong he will be in standing up to Russia. So that is Biden's strength. That was the peak. It was downhill on the State of the Union from there. And yes, you shouldn't have done it at length, but remind everybody that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party is standing up to Ukraine, standing up to Russia on the issue of Ukraine, because we want to make sure Russia knows they can't roll through the rest of Eastern Europe. That's it. Done. Full stop.
I would disagree with you that it was a smart thing to do. I think it's odd. I think it's really odd that a president delivers a speech about the State of the Union and starts off talking about Ukraine. And I don't know how many voters are going to be making their decision about voting for Joe Biden based upon his policies on Ukraine as compared to the economy, as compared to the budget, as compared to the border open, the crime, the fentanyl. One can go on and on. And here Biden gave a 67-minute speech and didn't even mention the border until about 50 minutes into the speech. So talk about burying the lead. That's my take on it.
Well, 77 minutes to be precise. 77. The reason why I say that number several times, the same day, just a day or two ago, America was reminded that some leadership from somebody in Uvalde waited 77 freaking minutes. Law enforcement waited 77 freaking minutes while kids were being slaughtered. And Joe Biden spoke for exactly 77 minutes, way too long. And Terry, his image, his problem, in short, he is an angry old man. He is physically and mentally fragile and frail. He is an old 81. Those were his problems. That's what he was trying to offset. He did what I'm just doing now. He shouted. Shouting is not the same as energy, as you remind me constantly. Energy is one thing, shouting quite another. Barry, that was what he was trying. That's what he was trying to do, and he did it to some extent at the beginning, offset the image of an old man, but he became an angry old man.
Like, I'm going to bring up the lower third graphic here, Biden's State of the Union, where it's hyper-partisan campaign speech, which was what I would say it is, and what a lot of commentators said it was. Somewhat of a just jointed grab bag, where he said, basically, my condensed version of Joe Biden's speech was, I'm not going to close the border, even though I already have all the power available to me to do it, but I will be open to funding anything you in Congress want to come at me with, because, hey, there's money to go around. $34 trillion national debt is not a big deal. The open border is not a big deal. Fentanyl deaths are not a big deal. Education failing in our cities is not a big deal. No, I'm going to focus on Ukraine, and that we ought to be funding Ukraine. And maybe I'll talk about January 6th, because that's a great way to bring us all together by starting inserting all these different campaign wedge issues in the State of the Union address. I meant to say, when we had the clip of Biden talking there that we already played, that was the only time, as I recall, that the Republican side of the aisle stood up when he said that he's going to stand up to Putin. But other than that, in a normal State of the Union address, you have a president making some effort to be bipartisan. This was nothing but a campaign speech. It could have been Biden's Democratic convention speech.
Well, the second major point to note here is that the problem with the national, with the state, with the local Democratic Party, Republicans like to say Democrat Party, not Democratic, but the problem with the Democrat Party is that they are delusional. They don't want to notice that the number one issue on people's minds by almost any poll is the illegal, virtually unvetted immigration coming across our southern border. The chickens are coming home to roost. People are dying in the interior of America because of illegal, unvetted immigrants coming across the border who are dangerous, who are killing, dangerous. So that's number one. They don't want to do, and the other thing they're delusional about, Terry, is about Joe Biden is a very weak candidate. He is an old 81. Trump is a young 77. They think by saying, oh, Trump is only 4 years younger than Biden, well, that handles the problem. No, it doesn't. So you can prop this guy up. You can give him meds. You can
whatever magic elixir they give him to go from being that feeble individual who can barely stand or talk to all of a sudden he's shouting at everyone. But even then, he started to run out of gas before the speech was over.
At the end of the day, he's reading from a teleprompter or he is in trouble. That's the problem. He cannot go 8 months in a campaign, not this time, without a debate, without being questioned at press conferences. He's going to have to deal with that, and he won't be able to. And the Democratic Party is delusional in thinking he can. And that is the problem. And he didn't deal with that. He did not pivot to inflation, which is what people are concerned about, to crime, which is what they're concerned about, to the problem of backing away from the support for Israel, the backing toward Palestinians. He didn't deal with any of that. He didn't satisfy the Palestinian revolt in his own party, and he certainly didn't satisfy the Jewry, American Jewry revolt.
Listen, I want to come back to that, but let me play a clip real quick here. There was a brief clip of President Trump responding to the speech.
Joe Biden is on the run from his record and lying like crazy to try and escape accountability for the horrific devastation he and his party have created. All the while, they continue the very policies that are causing this horror show to go.
And so there's the president saying Joe Biden's lies. A lot of people would agree with the President Trump that Joe Biden was lying through a number of places in his speech, including the fact that he doesn't have the power to close the border.
If you saw the rebuttal from RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., it was really right on point because he did what Biden can't do. He talked about the problems of America, but then pushed forward, as the Kennedys of old would, to the optimism, the new frontier of dealing with crime, of dealing with illegal immigration, of dealing with inflation, of dealing with foreign policy. So that's what America wants, an acknowledgement of the problems. But this is what Trump has to shift toward. He has to shift toward unity, the unity of the GOP, the unity of America in dealing with the problems of America. Trump can acknowledge the problems. He can call to their attention, obviously, the problems of inflation and crime and education and of anti-Semitism, because he didn't cause any of this. And Biden did. And so the Republicans and
Jeff,
Trump
let me
have
insert
to
something.
take
We
advantage
talked
of that.
about the Jewish community, and obviously we had the whole Middle East problem with Gaza. Biden did say he was going to be building a dock in Gaza to bring in supplies. I saw a report earlier today online about people in Gaza literally have nothing left to eat. So that's a problem. But within the Jewish community, and obviously historically Jewish voters in America vote Democratic, and I don't know, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, would very much be in favor of Donald Trump coming back in to power versus dealing with Joe Biden. I think a lot of Jewish Americans, it's my impression, I don't know for sure, and so I'm asking, to some extent, if you are plugged in or talking to people within the Chicago Jewish community, but you have, I think, a lot of Jewish Americans have been shocked at the vitriol that's coming against Jews, as what they've seen happening on college campuses, as what these college presidents said in their testimony, which was shocking, where a number of them had to resign and afterwards. What are you hearing, if anything, from the Jewish community? And is there going to be an erosion of Jewish support for Joe Biden because of what's happening in Israel versus Gaza?
Well, there definitely will be, because Jews are under attack across the country, on the colleges and universities, on their campuses. And none of the authorities at those universities are standing up and saying, you folks wanted at the universities, you wanted prohibitions of hate speech, you wanted to limit First Amendment. Okay, not all of us agreed with that, but you did that. And then you turned around and said, when the hate speech was genocide against Jews, you were quiet or you were supportive of Palestinians doing that. That is a fact. And that is something I think Trump and other Republicans will be running on, because Biden cannot correct that, because to the extent he does, he digs a hole for himself in Michigan and other, Minnesota perhaps, in those states where the Palestinian vote, that's how I'll put it, the Palestinian vote, the Muslim vote, the Arab vote is very important. He can't deal with those two
It's
things.
a good point you're making, but
he can barely get up in the morning.
But here's the thing.
All
right, so here's the thing, though. I mean, how much is Biden supposed to surrender his support from Jewish voters in America, who vote Democrat typically, to acquiesce to the Squad and the Arab support in Michigan and Minnesota? Because that's, I don't think the far left vote that wants to support Hamas is a big vote getter in states around the country. And I think Biden is in a very difficult position if he has to kowtow to the Squad, to Ilhan Omar and others. Then he risks what we're saying. I mean, turning off so many in his base and becoming a far left candidate instead of somebody who can say, as he was trying to say he was 4 years ago, that he's someone who's going to be a president for all Americans. In fact, at the very end of his speech, he was saying that I'm a president for all Americans, after he was lambasting the Republicans, attacking them for their ideas, and basically calling Donald Trump a Nazi.
Well, Terry, when much of the left makes a big thing of attacking the Fox News channel, the Fox Business channel, for not understanding, for not being representative of America, 45 minutes sometime within an hour or so of Biden, taking the podium. Within that time, within an hour or so, the Fox Business channel had on representatives of the young Jewish community that were reminding Biden what they wanted to hear, what this person, representative of the Jewish community that's under attack, the Jewish youth, they wanted to hear at the State of the Union about the names of the 6 Jewish citizens of America, who are now being held hostage by Hamas. We haven't heard about them, not at all. And certainly haven't uttered their names. And what he said was, if he didn't see a turnaround by Biden in this speech, then Biden would see that Jewish vote, who had been reliably Democratic for decades, they would move away from that. They would look at their alternatives, because they are citizens of the United States and they want to be represented by their president. And I think Biden should realize that those citizens are way more important than Hamas. Way more important than Hamas.
You know, he better, and not only Joe
He
Biden,
he seems to be representing at the
if
moment.
Joe Biden
Okay.
kowtows, as he has been, and overdoes it to get the support of the Hamas voters in America, to me, he runs, that is a extreme threat to the Democratic Party. If that becomes their brand, if moving forward, Joe Biden does that, people are going to not differentiate between Biden, what he was saying, and the Democrats. If the Democrats don't stand up and go, wait a minute, this isn't what we support. We're not for the slaughter of innocents in Israel. We're not for this. We may be for giving, aid to people in Gaza who need food. We're for that. But if Biden overdoes it, he could ruin the brand of the Democratic Party going forward and cause a lot of U.S. senators on the Democratic side of the aisle this year who are up to lose their seats in very contested races, as we have with John Tester, senator up in Montana, as we have with in Arizona. It's a very contested seat. The Democrats are already, I think it's acknowledged, going to lose West Virginia, now held by Joe Manchin, who is not seeking re-election. So there's a real threat. Look, one of the things he didn't talk about was
Terry, hold on.
Okay.
Let me just interrupt and add to what you just said. We're not talking just one or two senators. We're talking Manchin's seat for sure going to the Republicans. So that's one gain for sure. But yes, there's John Tester in Montana. There's Sherrod Brown in Ohio. There's now the Arizona seat with Kyrsten Sinema backing out and saying she's no longer running for re-election. So all three of those seats, which are rated as toss-ups by Cook and Associates, they are easy, good targets for the Republicans. But that ain't the end of it, because there are four other seats that are leans Democratic, just leans Democratic at the moment. Michigan, replacing the Stabenow seat, who's retiring. The Nevada seat with Jackie Rosen. With the Pennsylvania seat with Casey. The Wisconsin seat with Tammy Baldwin. All four of those seats are rated as toss-ups. So you have, we've just mentioned 7 seats that the Republicans have an excellent shot to pick up. And one seat we didn't mention is it's over. You can call that race right now, that race for West Virginia, for the Republican. Yes, you can call it on March 8 months before the election. Berkowitz called it right now, okay? The Illinois Channel, Terry Martin, I think you join me in that, right, Terry?
Yes,
Terry
the
Martin,
governor of West Virginia, who is a Republican,
race.
actually a former Democrat, who went over and joined the Republican Party when Donald Trump was in office. He left the Democratic Party. He will be the senator who will be elected. I don't think it's.
And one other quick cleanup is we mentioned, you alluded to certainly the Jewish vote for the first time in maybe half a century going to the Republican Party. Now it's not, and giving up on the Democratic Party. So you alluded to that. But you didn't mention what McDowell and Duffy on this duo on the Fox Business Channel mentioned within an hour or so of Biden speaking, is the black vote.
Well, let me bring it up, because I was just about to say, when we say, will the Democrats lose the states that we were just talking about? Obviously, the black vote is very critical in many of these states for the Democrats. And when we see an historic increase here in the support for Republican candidates, we see here, New York Times, Siena rather, I should say, poll. Yeah, look what's happening, and that has to be causing
4% to 23%. That's a seismic shift. That's the kind of vote that can turn battleground states, because the black vote is very significant in Pennsylvania, very significant in Wisconsin. 2 states right there where that vote can turn those battleground states to the Republican Party. And let me just mention that, McDowell and Duffy, they had on essentially a Jewish representative of the youth who were upset with what's happening in terms of anti-Semitism count the campuses. They also had Kata Truss, who is upset with what's happening here in Chicago. She is a black woman who's extremely articulate and thoughtful about
I've
these
listened
issues.
to her. I've seen her on TV.
Yeah, and so she spoke about, she's given up on the Democratic Party. She said there's nothing Biden could say last night, that would change her mind on this, because she's seen what's happened in Chicago. She's seen the accommodation of what the new mayor likes to call the newcomers, otherwise known as
and Jeff,
illegal
before
immigrants.
we get too late in here, let's bring up it's not just, we talked about the Jewish vote and the black vote, but look, every family of any color is being impacted by the rise in prices and inflation, and that's certainly something that Biden didn't get into. But look, this is a snapshot I took just the other day driving in Springfield, $3.79. And, you know, just about 2 weeks ago, or less than 2 weeks ago, it was $3.26, up 50 cents in just a short amount of time. And that may seem insignificant to people in Washington and the Democratic Party who want to talk about support for Hamas and other things, but that's killing people at the average American families. And by the way, that was the focus of Senator Katie Britt's Republican response to the State of the Union.
Yeah, because I think Illinois has the second highest state gas tax in the country. Second highest, okay, and there and that is a tremendous component, that high state gas tax, of the high gas prices in Illinois. So this is a local issue. This is a state issue. This is an American issue. Inflation is an American issue. And Biden said last night, inflation's coming down, like that issue is over. But cumulatively, the price level, 17% higher now than it was when Biden came in. So when you have 9% inflation and you come down to maybe 4% inflation, it doesn't mean that 9% impact goes away.
Let me bring up, you mentioned gas prices. We had this before, but let's remind people here. And you can see the high cost of gasoline. And that's, you know, as I think people now realize, as the price of gas has gone up, the price of diesel has gone up, that impacts every single thing you buy, because every single thing you buy has to be transported to the store where you're buying it. So that is an inflation multiplier when the price of gas goes up. And what is Joe Biden? One of his key policies, the war on fossil fuels. He was going to be the green president, the Green New Deal. And I think the Green New Deal is driving middle America into bankruptcy and driving credit card debt up to all-time highs, over $1 trillion. And as interest rates go up, that is another thing that is killing these families that had been living paycheck to paycheck. Now they're underwater. Now they're trying to put food on the table by putting it on the credit card and hoping that somehow they're going to find out how to pay that credit card bill off.
The highest inflation in 40 years. And this man and this party has the audacity to say, okay, it's fine. Prices are coming down. Inflation is coming down. Oh, yes, we've gone all the way down from 7.5% CPI to maybe 4%. Oh, isn't that wonderful? The cumulative impact, prices are 17% higher. He doesn't care about. He doesn't care about the high gas tax. You know, he ain't out there saying drill, baby, drill, okay? But Trump was. And 2 or 3 years of Trump, in the first 2 or 3 years, you saw prices coming down in gas and other you saw prices coming down in gas. You saw the effects of drill, baby, drill, and America liked that. Now we're seeing the turn to electric, and isn't this wonderful? Well, yeah. Well, maybe it takes longer when it's very cold to start your car, and you can't. Well, maybe you can't charge for as long as you'd like to. Maybe you can't drive for as long as you'd like to. Maybe you can't go where you'd like. So the chickens are coming home to roost. This is the progressive left.
The progressive
Biden brought everybody.
You're absolutely right. Look, electricity, we talk about the new economy, we talk about doing business online, it all takes electricity. And when you have a war on fossil fuels That is where the majority of our electricity is produced, by natural gas and coal. It's nuclear also big in Illinois, but that's unusual. We're number one in the country for nuclear power. That's not around the country. We need electricity, we need coal, we need natural gas, and these are the very things that the Green New Deal and the Biden administration has been putting a target on the back of, and the producers of those, raising taxes, raising regulations, and this is what the American people now, I think, are going to be deciding. And who was it that said, oh, it's the economy, stupid? James Carville, 30 years ago in the election of 1992, when he got Bill Clinton elected. It's
Sure.
the economy, stupid, probably more so this year than it was back in 92.
These are the kitchen issues. These are the pocketbook issues that America cares about. And what did Biden do? He reached out, he made another promise last night. He promised teachers, the strongest union in the country, the strongest public sector union in this country, the teachers union, the strongest constituents of the Democratic Party, we're going to raise the salaries of teachers, okay? In Chicago, average salary, 100K, average salary, 100K for teachers. What's his number one problem? Raising and rewarding the teachers for voting in the Democratic Party. And what is he promising, Terry? In Illinois, Illinoisans paid the second highest property taxes in the country. Illinois, we're going to raise your property taxes.
It's exactly what I thought when he said. I said, well, that'll help bring property taxes down.
When you look, the biggest component of property tax growth in Illinois and across the country, teacher salaries. So why doesn't he just come out and say, I'm going to raise your property taxes? Terry, these are all tremendous opportunities for Donald Trump to seize on when he runs for president over the next 8 months. Unify America. Talk about inflation, bringing it down. Talk about crime, bringing it down. This is one thing Trump has to do. Make clear he stands for NATO. He stands for he stands for standing up to Russia. It is his one Achilles heel, one weakness. Deal with that, and you've dealt with it, and then remind people Donald Trump is the real supporter of Israel. Not here today, gone tomorrow, as Biden is. So those issues, crime.
I think Trump is sincerely, when you look at his policies, it's not a campaign slogan for him. He's really committed to defending Israel. And with Iran maybe getting a nuclear bomb, and they are close to that, it's very critical we say that. Look, before we close out, we only got a minute. What did you think of the Republican response with Senator Britt?
Well, look, I thought the ideas were good, and she addressed all the issues, but she did not present it well. The delivery was not good. It was not in the right space. It shouldn't be coming from the kitchen. Look, in some ways, it's great. She's young. I didn't realize she's actually 42. In some respects, she projected 42 going on 14. It was not well delivered. It was a missed opportunity. The ideas were good. They just weren't presented.
I agree there. I didn't like her delivery. It seemed phony to me. It seemed like a 14-year-old the way she was delivering it, overly dramatic. She should have been in the Capitol and had the strength of that imagery, not a kitchen table. It was, to me, kind of a too obviously produced by some communications PR guy trying to be too cute. Listen, Jeff, we got to close out, but folks, thanks for watching. Leave us your comments about what you think and tell us what issues you think are going to resonate that we talked about, whether it's foreign affairs or your economic bread and butter issues. Jeff, we'll say goodbye.
Say goodbye. I will. We'll see you next week.